In the early hours of June 1st, 2020, shots rang out in the normally quiet suburb of St. John's, Auckland, New Zealand. It was just months after COVID had hit the shores of the island nation, and the country was in a level 4 lockdown, meaning only essential workers such as doctors, nurses, and food suppliers could move about. Along with a short supply of toilet paper across the nation, there was also a shortage of a much more sinister item, methamphetamine.
New figures show the use of methamphetamine more than doubled during the lockdown in some parts of the country. Stress and boredom have been flagged as adding to demand.
Lockdown had increased the demand for meth, at the same time as reducing the supply of the drug to the smaller regions outside the city. Clifford Umauri, a high-ranking member of the Mongrel Mob, needed to restock his supply, which had been running low for weeks. He had eager customers all over the bay, and plenty who were desperate for a gram to get them through the lockdown. He usually had a steady supply, but lately, all his local suppliers had been struggling to fill his orders, and Clifford needed to find another supplier ASAP. He was down to his last few grams when a friend suggested he make the 4-hour trip to Auckland, where she would hook him up with a dealer who could supply everything he needed. Despite breaking the lockdown rules, Clifford took the chance and drove to Auckland in the dead of night and met with the dealers in a deserted car lot. But the lights were too bright, and so the men decided to move their cars to a street not too far away. When they stopped, Clifford got out of his car and got in the back seat of the dealer's vehicle, where the deal would go down. But instead of a peaceful exchange of cash for drugs, 2 gunshots rang out in the silent streets. Clifford had been hit twice. He dragged himself out of the car and onto the pavement as the car took off. His friends who had come along to the deal knew he needed to see a doctor, but Clifford refused to go to the hospital. He didn't want to be caught by the police, who would know of his high ranking in the gang and arrest him. He began to lose conscience, so his friends decided to leave him near the doors of the local hospital, but he never made it inside.
Well, I heard arguing between, it sounded like a man and a woman, about 6 o'clock, and then all of a sudden there's 2 shots. It sounded like 22 caliber gun or rifle. The whole thing lasted for about half a minute.
And what sort of time was that in the morning, please?
About 6 o'clock.
Police arrived quickly, and it was long before they tracked down the dealers, Michael Faloa and Aaron Davis. The police suspected Clifford had been the target of a robbery where the 2 men had posed as dealers. They would have known the buyer would turn up with lots of cash. They believed the men had taken Clifford's cash, and when he fought back, they shot him in order to get away with the drugs and the cash. Both men were charged with murder and aggravated robbery. But on the stand, Michael and Aaron said the robbery had gone down differently. They claimed to have been meeting with Clifford. He ripped them off, and he tried to get away with their drugs without paying the full amount. When they tried to stop Clifford, he hit Michael in the head and was about to shoot them. Michael said he had no choice but to pull out the .22 sawed-off rifle he had hidden in his pants and shoot Clifford. Michael claimed, "I didn't shoot him to hurt him though. I shot him just to deter him." But the prosecution disputed their defense. No gun was ever found with Clifford's body, and the location of the gunshots in the arm and buttocks didn't line up with Clifford attacking the men. The wounds were more consistent with someone being shot while running away. Despite Michael continuing to declare his innocence, the jury found him guilty of murder, but not guilty of robbery. Aaron Davis was acquitted on both charges. Michael Faloa is due to be sentenced sometime in September 2022. It's difficult to decide who holds the blame for the outcome of this crime. Both sides were involved in drugs, weapons, and gang activities. Their actions have been devastating consequences for themselves and their families. One family lost a loved one, and another will see their loved one sent to jail. But there's always more to the story than what is revealed in a court trial or the media, and for this reason, I encourage you to find hope in this sad story, and know that there is always a choice, even when your circumstances have made you believe there isn't. Y'all know what it is. Stay the fuck out of trouble.
New figures show the use of methamphetamine more than doubled during the lockdown in some parts of the country. Consumption of the drug remains high, with fears children as young as 8 years old are using it.
Mongrel Mob is said to be heavily involved in the methamphetamine trade. They now make up half of all New Zealand gang members.
Recent figures show gangs are growing at the fastest rate since the 1970s, with many of the recruits being young people. It's thought the huge profit has been made from methamphetamine, or P, is behind the leap in numbers.